kids, so we're going to talk about this document right here that on one side it says, or on one page it says dependent and independent clauses at the top, and on the other it starts with compound, complex, and ing sentences. Basically, what I am wanting for you to take out of this is probably 2 or 3 things. One, I want you to kind of think about the difference between a dependent and independent clause, which we're going to go over. 2, I want you to know how this document is laid out so that it can be a resource for you so that you can use it in your own writing. And then 3, I want you to learn about these different elements right here for the AWUBUS and the fanboys and things like that so that you can start to put sentences together or evaluate sentences that you have. So the only real lesson that we're going to do with all of this specifically is the difference between an independent and a dependent clause. And then otherwise, this is going to serve as a resource for you in your journal. So here's what we're going to be doing. The mini lesson we'll talk about right here is this dependent-independent clause. And if you think about the word dependent versus independent, you could think of it as like you are a dependent or you are dependent on your guardians for basic necessities, like you need them for food and a home and money to go to the movies if you get to go do that. So dependent means basically that you cannot do it alone. In the land of sentences, a dependent clause is oftentimes just a fragment. It cannot stand alone because it is not a complete sentence. Okay, just like you cannot stand on your own and gauge this world by yourself because you're not an adult. So, and then we have on the other side of that is an independent clause, which means that it can stand alone. Okay, to do something independently means that you can do it by yourself. So, like most of you can hopefully tie your shoes independently. My son is still dependent on me for tying shoes. So when it comes down to this, independent means you can do it by yourself or it can stand alone. Dependent means that it cannot stand alone. And in this land, we're talking about a sentence in and of itself. Okay. As we talk about that in an independent clause, there are 2 different parts to an independent clause. There is a subject. The subject is the who or what, okay? And go ahead, if you haven't already, go ahead and grab some annotation pens so that you can go ahead and be making some of these markings as we go, because again, this is the only lesson part we'll do, and then we're just going to talk about how the document's set up as a whole. Okay, and then we have a predicate. Yeah, pause if you need to. And the predicate is the doing what? So in a complete sentence, okay, there will be a subject, a who or a what, doing something. Okay, so for example, if we look at these ones right here, and all of these are excerpts from books, great books, by the way. We have, I looked up into her burning green eyes. So the subject, the who that's doing something, subject's usually at the beginning, not always. In these simple sentences, it is. I is your subject because the I is looking up. Okay, so that is your subject and your predicate. Complete predicate is all the rest of it, but we're not getting into that right now. It's what is the subject doing? If you want to underline the whole thing because that makes sense to you, that's totally fine as well. We're not getting that specific right now. Okay, the next sentence, I just didn't have the faintest clue where it was. Okay, so the subject, the who, is I, and what did the I do? They didn't have something. Okay, they didn't have, in this case, the faintest clue, but the verb in here is they didn't have. Okay, if you want to, again, underline all of it, that's totally fine. The subject is up until the verb, basically, and then the verb on is the complete predicate. Okay. The girl staring back at me when I looked in the mirror had disheveled pink hair and 2 black eyes. Okay, so then you have, again, the subject, who's the one who's doing something. It's the girl. That's your complete subject. And then you have your predicate. is staring, not even staring back, but your predicate is staring back, and then your complete predicate is all of this. Notice that most of it is going to be the predicate in these simple sentences where there's not two independent clauses, which we'll get into that if you want more specifics. Dependent clause, again, is either missing the subject or the predicate, like something, we don't know something. So if you look at this one, not only impossible, but silly too. Okay, so we kind of know what the predicate is. It's not only impossible, but silly, but we don't know what the subject is, the who or the what. What is silly? What is impossible? So this one has no subject. Okay, and having something to do with what happened to Dad. Again, we have a predicate because having something to do, but we're missing the subject. And this often happens in books. When you do dependent clauses in and of themselves and you have fragments, sometimes it's okay as long as you are doing it intentionally, which means on purpose. But understanding how sentences are constructed can help you make sure that when you think you're writing a sentence and you're not, you can have a look at it. Okay, so we have tiny green grains no bigger than sand. So we have our subject. We know that the who or the what are green grains, but we have no predicate. Okay, we don't know what the tiny green grains are doing. Okay, and then here, except the small elbow of an arm. And half the face of the doll it clutched. Well, I feel like here we have a subject. Well, it has it clutch, so, but this isn't a complete sentence. I don't really know all the time, except the small elbow of an arm. I don't even know that that's, I mean, maybe it is the subject because it's a small elbow of an arm. We don't know what the small elbow of the arm is doing, but we have except in front of there, so maybe there's some kind of technicality that I don't know. Lo and behold, I don't know everything. All right, so the first lesson that I want for you to kind of understand the difference between is dependent clause, independent clause. Okay, so dependent cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. They are alone in books oftentimes to create mood and tone. However, they are not a complete sentence. Independent clauses, however, are complete sentences because they have a subject, the who or the what, and a predicate doing what. Okay, so make sure that the top of yours does look similar to this. Hopefully you have two colors so that you can mark the subjects and the predicates just to have that basic understanding of a sentence. Now, the rest of this document, what I'm going to be doing is just kind of showing you how the document is laid out. I'm not going to mini lesson each type of sentence because that will, a lot of it depend on what type of writing you're doing. And I am more than happy to sit down and work with you on any of these if you're wanting more information. So the way that the document is set up is this. You'll see that across the top there are gray bars, and these have the type of sentence that you will see. So you have simple, complex, compound, compound, complex. Those are really defined. And then ing sentences, because I see you all using these a lot in your writing. You will also see excerpts from actual novels as the sentences that are modeling these different ideas. Okay. Then in the middle section is any information that you will need to understand the far right section. So that being said, in the middle, like here, when I say sentence, that means independent clause. Sentence and independent clause are the same thing. And I guess I really should say the complete sentence and an independent clause are the same thing. So then you will see here, like for complex sentence, you'll see that it says a dependent a wubis. This is a wubis. These are also called prepositions. They're often found at the beginning of sentences. As you all write, you'll say something like, after I went to the store, comma, I went home to cook my meal. Or when I got home from school, comma, I had a snack. So these are often found at the beginning of a sentence. They're not always found at the beginning of the sentence, as you can see. But over here, you can see how they can be used. So if you do have one at the beginning of a sentence, then you need a comma, then you have a sentence. Okay, I think I only used the word sentence instead of independent clause because it was shorter, quite frankly. So there's that. Again, another type of sentence with the a wubis. A compound sentence, these have the fanboys. You're very familiar with these. You use these all the time in your writing. Primarily the ones that you all like to use are and, but, or, and so. So if you like to highlight those, go ahead and do that. But what has happened is over here then on the side, you can see how sentences are constructed using these. So again, if I were to make this again, I'd probably have this say independent clause because that is the technical term. But as we know from here, sentence equals independent clause. It needs to be able to stand by itself, okay? So here you can see that you have sentence, comma, then you use a fanboy sentence, or you can use a semicolon, and there's different ways to put this together. Compound is an independent clause plus another independent clause, so this is defining. It's a complete sentence plus another complete sentence, because we're going to talk about commas with and in another video, okay? Again, I do not expect you to be an expert about this. What I do expect is for me to be able to say, hey, go to that sentence sheet and look at the complex a-wubbis sentence for how you punctuate that. And of course, I will help you because that's what I like to do. Finally, you have compound complex sentences. There's nothing in this middle column here because everything that's mentioned over here is something that you are, is in an earlier lesson for you, or an earlier section. And then the ing sentences, whether ing is at the beginning of the sentence or within the sentence, I just want you to have an idea of how those work because we tend to do those quite a bit. Okay. The last thing I will tell you is that you will see that over here there's going to be a cue for each of these. Of course, the cue for ings is going to have an ing verb like dashing, having, during. Well, it's not really a verb, but that's not a really big deal. Fighting. Okay. All of these tend to be verbs, except for during, which is preposition, which is a whole other thing. Okay, here you're looking for the semicolon fanboys and an a-wubbis. You would need both of those in this type of sentence. Here, when it comes to a simple sentence, that's where you could be like, hey, I have something quick. And it's that quick secret type telling. It's not, you're not going to be like this and tell the whole movie and then tell me the thing and then you're not doing that. It's just a really short, get to the point. Hey. Okay. And then here you're looking for one of those a-wubbis words. These are not the only prepositions that are out there. I will tell you there are so many prepositions, but these are ones that tend to be the most common. As you find ones that you use more often, you can just kind of add them in the space right here. And then, of course, fanboys, you're looking for this. And then these are your fanboys here. Again, pay attention to and, but, or, and so. And then you have that difference between a compound, which is independent, versus a dependent and independent clause. So, all right. Your lesson, what I expect you to take away. Dependent cannot stand alone. It is not a complete sentence with a subject and a predicate. It's missing one. Okay, an independent clause can stand alone. It contains both the subject, which is the who or the what, and the predicate, which is what the who or what is doing. Okay, then this document is set up. You have mentor text over on the far left. You have additional information with what things mean, like a-wubbis here. Here's what it's defined. Here's fanboys. Here's where it's defined here. And then over on the far right, you have different layouts for how these sentences would go with included punctuations. A-wubbis, comma, sentence. Sentence, a-wubbis, no comma in there if the a-wubbis is at the end. So I tried to find mentor texts that support both of those. If you'd like any more information about any one of these, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to sit down with you. Through a conference, we can get that going. But use this as a resource to you, which is all that I expect from you with this document at this moment. So, all right, kids, thanks and happy sentencing.